Okay, so let's continue from where we ended in the first session, public sector. Prophecy, you want to read that? Please go ahead for me.
In public sector accounting, this is the process of documenting all transactions involving the receipt. Involving the receipt, transfer and disposal of public monies and properties, as well as the analysis, classification, summarization, communication, and interpretation of financial information concerning the government in both aggregate and detail.
Okay, great. So public sector accounting, as you know, accounting to be an information system, right? That gathers data and processes it into meaningful information. And the processing is where you talk about collecting, analyzing, recording, classifying, summarizing. So public sector accounting is also doing all these accounting activities, but the focus is centered on public institutions or organizations that are set up by the government. So that's public sector accounting. Why do we do public sector accounting, or why do we do accounting in the public sector? One is to satisfy requirements of the Constitution. Remember, it is the whole citizens who are interested in this in the affairs of the public sector, right? Just that all of us cannot go into the management of the country or the economy. So we appoint or elect few people to lead us. So the Constitution requires that if you are leading the group, then you have to report or account to them. So it's a satisfaction of a constitutional requirement. The more reason why we do public sector accounting, so that the citizens can know how much the government is spending, how much revenue the government is getting, right? So two, provides basis for assessing the performance of the government. I think we can assess whether this government is performing or not based on the accounting information we get from them. So you look at the debt levels, inflation rate, the exchange rate, to be able to make some of these deductions as to performance of the government. Provides useful information for decision making. Yes, I think funny I want to say this, but if you assess the government and how it's performing, then you can decide whether to stay in this country or to seek greener pastures elsewhere. Even though I'm not preaching that you leave the country, please, let's stay here and make the country better for ourselves and our future generations. Would you agree and do that, or you still would go to the other areas or the other parts of the world? Please, let's stay in Ghana and make Ghana better. Okay. It forms part of accountability and stewardship, yes. So, like I indicated in the first point, the government should be held accountable for the mandate we have given them to man the affairs of the state. It also provides basis for planning and controlling of government activities. Right, so the policy like the free SHS, sometimes the government is able to account for how much it has spent in terms of food, water, utility, or whatever. Okay, to be able to know whether to adjust or to add more resources to the sector. Okay, users of accounting, public sector accounting information. Okay, I think from Form 1 we saw the creditors, debtors, shareholders or owners of the company as users of accounting information. The same applies here, but maybe would extend to donor communities, student, lecturers, researchers. They all use information from the public sector. Okay, economic planners, taxpayers, bankers and lenders to the government, regulatory bodies, okay, budget analysts, the auditor general, in fact, a whole lot of them. The World Bank, IMF, the IMF, for instance, pick the financial information of the government and is able to tell the government to reduce maybe policy rates or reduce this, and even use that to assess granting loans to the government. Right? Okay, so these are some of the uses you can think about. Now, differences between public sector accounting and private sector accounting. Please, if you have questions, pause me and ask. Or if you want me to repeat a point, let me know. The first difference is that the public sector accounting reports on government revenue and use of public funds, but private sector is only looking at profits and financial positions of businesses managed by individuals, right? Or owned by private individuals. Okay. 2, it groups accounts into public accounts and departmental accounts. So under the public sector, the accounts are grouped into either public or departmental, right? But when it comes to the private sector, we have the personal account, real account, and the nominal accounts. 3, it aims to report to the general public. So public sector mainly reports to the general public. Private sector, its major reporting audience is the shareholders and owners. All the other interested parties, well, the shareholders are their focus because they are interested in the profit they are making from the business. The next one says apply mainly cash basis of accounting and under the private sector accrual basis. I think I'll explain a bit about the cash basis and accrual basis later on. But just for you to be clear, cash basis means like what you say, cash and carry. You only acknowledge revenue and expense when you pay cash or money. Okay, but you know the accrual that's considered when you haven't paid. That's why we have owings and arrears in such basis of accounting, right? So, for example, in the cash basis of accounting, a business person or a trader would acknowledge sales when he receives or she receives cash. But under the accrual basis, if the goods have been transferred and he has not received cash, he will still acknowledge that he has made sales. So that's a bit about accrual and cash. Okay, we say the public sector accounting does not necessarily apply the double entry principle to the latter. Please, key point there, to the latter. So it applies, but not so much bothered about the double entry principle. Okay, but under the private sector, double entry is completely adhered to. We don't joke with double entry when it comes to the private sector as compared to the public sector. Okay, sources of revenue to the government. I think you've done this in social studies. You know where the government is getting its money from. And the first main source is taxation, tax. So be it income tax, corporate tax, which is tax on incomes of companies. The income is on private individuals or workers. Import duties, when you import shoes, clothing, cars, the government impose some levies on them. The same when you are exporting. Today I haven't drunk tea, so pardon me. When you are exporting, you also pay some tax there. Then we have court fines. When you go to the court, a lot of people are being fined for either violating one rule or the other, right? Royalties. Sometimes you are using a government facility, you have to pay royalties to the government. So royalties are fees you pay for using someone's asset, right? So if you are using a government's asset, you pay royalties. Then licensing fees, like the driver's licensing fees, or the licenses that you need to be able to do certain things. Road tolls and levies. Unfortunately, Ghana is now not tolling the roads, so the monies are not coming from there anymore. Okay, I think somebody should continue for me. Oh, the person can continue. Or let me finish with it, then the person will read the next type, which will be the 2 major funds of the government. So the loans, grants, the grants we receive from these foreign donors are all part of where the government gets money from. Then profits or dividend from government corporations, so Ghana Water Company. But I see the irony is that most of the companies Ghana owns are making huge losses. ECG, for instance, is always in debt. And so we are not getting profit and dividend. Then donations, right? And when we sell government property, like they sold a lot of companies and got the money. We don't know where the money is now. That is a discussion for another day. Now let's look at the two major public funds of the government. So the person should read that for me. The consolidated and the contingency. Let's see.
Okay. So 1. Consolidated fund. It refers to the central pool where all government revenues are deposited and from which our monies are disbursed to make payments of expenditures. Funds in here is managed by the Controller and Accountant General's Department. 2. Contingency fund. This fund is set to cater for unforeseen events.
Okay, Professor, thank you for that. But can you explain, or can any of you explain what you just read? Consolidated fund. I think you've heard of that. And contingency. The contingency fund is easier, right? Because there's a fund that is set to cater for unforeseen events. Okay, so they are for contingencies. If something should happen, like I don't want to, remind us of the unfortunate incident, but that disaster that occurred, I think June 4th or something. Okay, this is an unplanned event, right? So some monies are set aside by the government to take care of some of these things. Even the COVID was not planned, or it's just happened. So we had to enter into some of the contingency fund to support the citizens, right? The consolidated fund, that is looking at the central pool where all government revenues are deposited and from which all monies are disbursed. Okay, so when we say consolidated fund, it means that all the monies the government is making, whether from ECG, from Ghana Water, from the ministry, they should all be deposited in this account. And that is what is being practiced currently. So it's out of the consolidated fund that all payments too are made in terms of salaries, insurance, disbursement to get fund and all those projects. That's where it comes from. And this is overseen by the Controller and Accountants General's Department, right? It is my prayer that one of you would assume that position as a Controller and Accountant General, so that Mr. Amma, when I can just say, oh, please credit his account with 3 million Ghana cedi. Or you people not do that for me. Hey, you won't say amen to my prayer.
Amen.
Amen. And when you get there, remember me. I just need few, notes in my account. By that time I'll be an old boy, enjoying life small. Okay, now let's focus on government expenses and government revenue. As we've seen the revenue, the expenses. Some of the expenses of the government include, building of roads, hospital, markets, construction of roads. These things are easier for us to know, so let's not waste my time on that, right? But one thing I want you to appreciate is that some of the expenditure are of capital nature and others are recurring or recurrent expenditure. So let me explain that bit. Capital expenditure is an expenditure whose benefit accrues over a longer period of time, right? So if you build a school, for instance, the school is going to last for longer period. But if you do maintenance and repairs, you pay salaries. You see, it's recurring. You do it every year, right? And the benefits is not for so long. You pay a worker for 1 year. You enjoy the benefit of that worker for 1 year, and that's it. Okay, dear professor, sorry for my mic was muted. Okay, so capital expenditure and recurrent expenditure, know the difference. Recurrent means this type of expenditure occurs more often. Let me cite a scenario for you personally. If you consider your school bag, see, you have used your school bag, some of you even complete school with it, right? So that's a capital expenditure. But look at the frequency with which I don't want to use this, it's very sensitive, but look at the frequency with which, let's say, you barber your hair. Okay, it's like virtually some of you 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you have to barber your hair, right? So that is a recurring spending. Okay, so that's the difference between the two. So we should be able to know what constitutes government capital expenditure and what constitutes recurring expenditure. So for recurring, we have maintenance and repairs, paying wages and salaries of workers, interest on loans. You know, interest on loans are payable every year, even monthly. Some pay monthly. Traveling and transport expenses. Every day, the government workers are traveling. You know, the CEOs are traveling, etc. Okay. Now let's look at this bit. The sources of revenue to the local. What we saw is to the central government, as in the main government. What of the local government, as in the districts, the municipal and metropolitan assemblies? They get money from one, subvention from the central government. Okay, so I don't know if you are aware of this popular one district, 1 million Ghana cedi, right? So the government promised to give every district 1 million Ghana cedi. That would have been a subvention from the central government. However, there is an existing subvention from the central government, and I think they call it something. It's a common fund or something. I've really misplaced it, right? And normally when it comes, the DCE or the MC, the district chief executive or the municipal chief executive, will use it for developmental projects in that particular district. Okay. So income from use of cemeteries, yes. Okay. I don't want to talk about cemeteries. Market tolls. When you go to the market, the women pay some small coins there, right? Rent from local government properties. Yes, the government has some properties people are renting and they pay to the local government or the district assemblies and etc. Fines from local court. Yes, when the local court takes any money from somebody for flouting rules, it goes to the district, right? Okay, institutions that play vital role in public sector accounting. So we have the Parliament, the Ministry of Finance, right? The Controller and Accountant General's Department, Public Accounts Committee, and I don't know if you have been following this committee, you know, assesses public officials if they have mismanaged some funds given them. Then we have the Auditor General. Sometimes they publish they air some of their proceedings on GTV, right? And some people will be answering questions. Okay. So documents that are used in public sector, we have the constitution, the budget, you know, all the bills and the acts are there. Some of these things are not highly examinable, so permit me if I do so to skip them, right? The types of account under public sector, we have the public accounts and the department accounts. So the public account is a type of account involving the consolidated fund. And as I told you earlier, it's managed by the Controller and Accountant General's Department. Okay. And the department account, these are records kept for transactions of department and ministry. So if you picture it, it's like all the ministries and department, they have their own account, and that's the department account. Now, when they remit everything into the central pool called the consolidated fund, then accounting for that consolidated fund is the public accounts, right? Okay, then you have some of the books used in public sector as well. You have the cash book, the impress book, the register of vouchers. I think I'll speak about the vote book. In public sector, when you hear vote, okay, vote means that an approval has been given to make payment for certain expenditure, right? So the vote book is used to monitor approved estimate of expenditure in the budget to ensure no money is spent outside the budget. Okay. Now we are getting closer to where we have to, pay attention to, and that's some of the financial statements of the government and accounts of the government, right? But before that, let's look at the basis used in public sector account. I think I've given a hint about the cash and accrual. Okay, but I think enough of this theory thing. Now let's look at what you are interested in. As in the final exams, what are some of the things you'll be required to do? And the first one is you may be required to prepare a trial balance for the government. Professor, you want to say something? Well, if you don't like the idea of me skipping, please tell me so that I go back. But I know when you read some of the things, you'll be okay. Okay, so you can be asked to prepare a trial balance, an income and expenditure account, a receipt and payment account, statement of capital expenditure, and statement of revenue expenditure. Now, the revenue expenditure is the same as the recurrent expenditure I spoke about. Okay. Yes, Professor, you go ahead.
Mr. Ma, please, can you go back?
Is it because you want to write something? Because I'll share the notes with you. Don't worry, I'll share the full notes with you, okay? Okay, so please, these are the highly examinable areas you can be asked to prepare some, account and statement. So note them carefully. Trial balance, income and expenditure accounts. So we'll be comparing the income of the government to the expenses, right? Receipt and payment, okay, which is more or less like the cash book. So when the government receives money, you record in this book, and when it is paying money, you record in this book. It is similar to the income and expenditure, just that the income is only looking at, things that bothers about revenue, okay? Because some receipts are not necessarily revenue, right? Okay, and not all payments necessarily constitute expenditure of the government. So hence the distinction there. Okay. Now I would want you to look at some of the assets and liabilities of the government, and I'll implore you to pay attention to this one. Okay, so I think I'll give you a minute or two to quickly look at some of the assets of the government. I know you know what assets are, and you know the plant and machines, etc. But pay attention to this as well as the liabilities.